stream. Open up. Here we go. Boom. All right, link is in the chat. You guys already know the deal. See you on that side. Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. Testing microphone. 1, 2, 3. I'll tell you one thing. When your voice is kind of weird and everything, it makes you sound deep and serious and fucking legit. Your voice is kind of weird. All right. So, here we go. Oh, shit. Alan to the punch every fucking time. Yo, this is consistent, man. If you get 3 in a row, we might have to do something about that. You know what I'm saying? We might have to, I don't know. Just might have to celebrate that. Drinks. All right, let's begin. So what I've done is...
Y'all can't do this with me, man.
Okay. I think I was freaked out for a second. All right, here we go. Let's start this process. Hopefully everybody's in. If you guys are wondering how I'm able to switch between different tabs, it's Command and hit the tab button. Pretty cool little shortcut for Macs. All right, here we go. Looks like everybody's in. Jackpot P, I like that. Here we go. So I downloaded one of the songs from that Cambridge site, specifically this song called Dream State by Baum X Media. Scared G, idiot. Stop, don't do that, please. Hannah, please don't. All right, so I downloaded the multi-tracks, right? And you guys already know how to do that. If not, I'm going to show you one last time how to do it. You go to this Cambridge site over here, right? The link is already in the M1 assignment. The song I chose was called Dream State. There it is. Right? So you choose whichever song you like. If you want, you can listen to a snippet or whatever, right? Now, there's a couple of links that you can click on per song, right? There's one thing that says 122 MB edited excerpt, one that says full multi-track 345 MB, right? You want to choose the bigger one because you want the full song. If you just take a little snippet of the song, you're not going to get the full grade. In fact, I will take a lot of points off for that. So make sure you first downloaded the correct tracks and the full song, not just a part of it. So you want to go to full multi-tracks and you want to download the larger set, which is the 36 track one, right? So that's what I did. And when I did that, I got this little zip file over here. You see it says Baum X Media underscore Dream State underscore full, right? So these are the multi-tracks. Now I'm going to double click on this zip file, which will then extract whatever was in the zip file. All right, so you can see that we've got a folder that shows up with the exact same name. And within that folder, I have what looks like multi-tracks. Now here's the great thing about whoever set this up. And this is something to take note of if you are serious about being a recording engineer in the whole industry, right? So you know how track organization is a big part of setting up a session, right? Because when your tracks are organized, when your session is organized, there's less thought going into where shit is and what shit is named and how to find stuff. And there's more thought and energy putting into just the creativity and the music and the tools, right? This is the fundamental basis for track organization. If you're a recording engineer and you're the one responsible for tracking the song, you will do a huge service to the mix engineer if you deliver the stems like this. Now you can see that he has numbered everything. 0, 1, kick 1. 0, 2, kick 2. 3, 4. Everything is numbered first and then the name of the instrument. Now you might be wondering what's the big deal, right? Well, here's the big deal. Pro Tools, when you import audio, imports it alphabetically, right? That also means it'll import it numerically or chronologically. So when I import this, the tracks will be next to each other in this exact order. And what's so special about this order? Well, look at it. Everything is grouped together. Those are drums, you got pianos, you got synths. They're all grouped together. The vocals are all together, right? These are all vocals. They're all next to each other. So I don't have to click and move shit around whenever I do import the session into Pro Tools. So that's a beautiful part of it, right? Hey, Imani, we're on YouTube. I'll see you there. Link is in the chat.
Okay.
So, oh, what's up, Matt? I saw you initially. So that's a huge part of it. That is the number one amazing thing about whoever prepped this session for mixing. So if you're a recording engineer, make sure you do that shit. The next thing, which I love about the people who set this shit up, is there's a text file in addition to all the stems. You see that these are all .wav files, right? Which is perfect. But the readme.txt file is where the little bit of information comes in. Now, obviously, there's a disclaimer, which is that these are for educational purposes only, and you cannot resell them in terms of a commercial purpose, right? Unless you have permission from the artist. You already know this deal. But here's where the key is. There's 36 WAV files, 24-bit, 44.1. So it tells you how to set up the Pro Tools session, the format, right? Perfect. And the best thing is that it gives you the tempo. You don't have to struggle trying to find the tempo using the method that we talked about, right, in Pro Tools, because we know it's not as intuitive as Ableton. It's written right there, so you don't even have to think about it. Tempo is 114. So this is the correct, accurate, amazing way to set up a stem folder. So if you're the recording engineer, this is how you want to do it, all right? So there we go. We've got the folder. And I created a Pro Tools session called Dream State Mix PT, and you can see that's the one behind over here, right? Me personally, I like to put these stems inside the actual Pro Tools folder. That's just a personal thing of mine, but you don't have to do that. In this case, I'm not going to do it because I don't think a lot of you did, right? That's okay. Doesn't matter. So now I'm going to go to my Pro Tools session, and this is where all the fun starts. First thing I always do is I create a stereo master fader, right? You guys know, again, to make a new track, any type of new track, you go to track, you go to new, and then you choose whatever you want. Stereo, master fader, create. First thing I always do, all right? Now, I'm going to primarily use EQs, compression, leveling, and panning, but every now and then I may pull up a plugin that looks odd or looks foreign. That's okay. Doesn't matter if you don't understand it or you can't hear it or whatever. I'll explain it, but don't take it to mean like, oh my God, I'm a fucking loser. You don't have to think about that, right? So on the master fader, what I always do is the very last plugin, I click on the insert, right? The very last insert, I should say, insert letter J. I go to multi-channel plugin and I put what's called a metering tool, right? I'm just going to put it to my settings. So a metering tool basically lets me know the loudness as well as the spectral content of my mix, because remember, everything goes to the master fader at the end of the day, right? And if everything is going to go to the master fader, then I need to know what the overall level of the mix is and what the spectral distribution is over the mix. It's just something that I like to know, because as you do mod 3 and 4, you'll start to realize that mixes for different purposes have different specs, right? For Spotify, it's one thing. For film and TV, it's another thing. So you got to be aware of that stuff. So that's all I'm going to do for the master fader right now. That's it. Nothing else. Next, what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and import these files, right? Actually, first thing, let me set up the tempo because they already know what the tempo is. It is 114. You already know that. Double click on the triangle to open up the tempo edit. Change to tempo 114. I'm going to change this to bars and beats because that's what we're going to be working in. I want to make sure I can see the grid by clicking the grid over here. And quarter notes is fine. I'm not really too concerned about that. Now let's import the audio, right? You go to File, go to Import, Audio, right? And we got to find out where I saved that. Let's see, JSP, no, SAE. Here it is. This is the folder, right, with all the stems. Open this up. Like I said, if you just press Command A, it selects everything and puts it in the current file clips. Always, 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 always copy. Okay? If you don't fully understand the way this thing works, always copy. Just take my word for it, right? And I've already explained what these do. Then you hit done, you hit open, and it processes, and it will load onto the new tracks, right? That's fine. Doesn't matter. Didn't really need to spot it, but whatever. Here we go. These are the multi-tracks. Now, the one thing I will say about these multi-tracks is it's very interesting to see different file lengths, right? Usually it's more common that all the stems are exactly the same length, and that's technically the correct way to do it. But I'm assuming that this is still right because the guy did, or girl did, everything else correctly. Next, I'm going to hold, so you see how all these tracks are selected, like all the names are highlighted white. So all the tracks are selected, which means I can't really move anything individually, and that's really annoying. So the first thing I'm going to do is hold Command, click, and then let go of Command and click. I'll do that one more time, right? So they're all selected, and gonna hold Command, gonna click on one of them that's highlighted, that will deselect it, gonna let go of Command, and then just click it, right? So there we go. Now we have all these files not selected. Next, what I'm gonna do is, and this is something that I generally do for mixing and something that you might want to incorporate into your own workflows, is that, remember we talked about playlists, right? Whenever you want to make a new playlist, you click on this little down arrow and you create a new playlist. Yes, very good, Shift Command I for importing audio. Duplicating a playlist basically means that this playlist will get copied onto a new playlist. So you have a copy of the original clip whenever you need to access it, right? When I click on the down arrow and go to new, it creates an empty playlist, which you can then fill up with information. You click on the waveform, go to playlist, and you can see it right there in case you need it. But in this case, what I'm doing is instead of clicking on new, I'm clicking on duplicate, right? So when I duplicate, I have a copy of the original clip accessible to me. So it's really, really good to have that in case you make changes that you won't be able to undo. So like Audio Suite plugins, right? Matt, I don't know why you're trying to get into Zoom. You don't have to be in Zoom if you're already on YouTube. You're good. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to take advantage of this playlisting duplication, and I'm going to make a duplicate of every single track, right? So instead of going one by one and clicking on duplicate, all I need to do is I hold Option, click on the arrow, press duplicate, and it automatically duplicates every single one. Whenever you hold Option and perform a function, it applies to all the tracks. Not for every function, but a lot of functions. So for example, I'll tell you another example of the Option shortcut, right? If you hold Option and go to your input, because we're mixing, we're not really recording anything, but if you go to the input while holding Option down and change the input to no input, it'll change all of them. Now, why it didn't do this one is very weird. Oh, because it's, okay, stereo and mono, fine, whatever. But there you go. No inputs on all the tracks. Cool. All right, so we're getting this session going pretty good. And you can see that every one of them has a duplicate playlist with the original track, with the original clip, right? Next thing I'm going to do is, these names are very long, right? Especially when you get to like backing vocals. Like, I don't know what that even means, right? That BCKN, I mean, okay, yeah, sure. But even the little bit amount of time that I take to try to find that is a waste of time and energy. I want to make sure that my entire focus is on enjoying the mix and trying to bring it out. So if I have to take even 5 seconds to be like, what is that? BCK and what is it? Backing? Okay, Vox 3, Vox 3.1. It's too much time, right? Too much time and energy wasted. So I'm going to go in and change the name of all of these to something that's close to the original name, but something that's going to make sense to me, right? You don't want to stray too far from the names, because when the artist gives you feedback and says, hey, can you turn down cymbal effects, right? You got to know what cymbal effects track he's talking about, right? Or if she says like, hey, turn down my backing vocals number 2, you have to know which one she's talking about. It's very important. It's really frustrating to artists if you rename your entire session and then when she says, turn down my vocals, you're like, which one is that? That's so unprofessional, and it's like, looks like you don't know what you're doing, right? Really annoying. So I'm going to name them something close, but something that's going to be pretty easy to see. So for example, to rename a track, you double click on the name of the track and it pops up this little window. I'm going to call this Kick 1. All right. To go to the next track, I can either hit OK and then double click the next track, Kick 2, or I can just hit this little next button over here and that goes to the snare, right? And the shortcut to click on next is Command and the right arrow. The shortcut for previous is Command and the left arrow. So if I want to go to the next track, Command, right arrow, and now I'm on hi-hat, right? Hi-hat. And as I'm naming all these, I'm looking at my actual tracks to see if it visually looks like something that I will understand, right? Very, very important. Now, you can also do this in the mix window view, right? So whichever place you want to do it, that's fine. Symbol, this is symbol FX. This is chimes 2. I think it was chimes 1. Bass. So I'm just going to quickly go through these and just rename them to something that I can visually see. Synth 1, synth 2, synth 3, synth 4, synth 5, synth 6. A lot of synths. Synth 7. Yeah, this is kind of inefficient. I don't know why. Maybe the synths are just... It would have been nice to have like some sort of differentiation in the name of the different synths, but I don't know. Because like if they're all synths, I don't know what they actually sound like. Electric guitar effects. So I'm going to call that E-Guitar FX. Strings 1. Strings 2. But strings 3. I know this is the boring shit, but this is really what's going to make your session fly by. later on. You want to take as much time to prep so that you can have more fun and energy put into the actual mixing process, right? You don't want to have to keep going back and forth and try to figure out, oh, what did I mean by that? Oh, what did she mean by this? Or, well, what did he mean by that? It's very, very inefficient. Where am I at? Lead Vox 1, lead Vox 2. Call it B Vox 1, B Vox 1 DT. So whenever you see the letters DT, it means double tracked. All that means is that the artist tracked the vocal once, and then they did a new track, not a new playlist, a new track, and tracked the same vocal line, but a new performance. So it kind of has a doubling effect. That's what DT stands for. So whenever you see that, that's what it means. So B Vox 2. Here it says backing Vox 2 DT, so it's a double. B Vox 2 DT. B Vox 3. B Vox 3 DT. B Vox 3 DT. Can you say that fast? B Vox 4 DT. And there you go. So now, look at that. It's nice and organized. I can instantly look at a track and know what it might be. Again, the biggest problem is that these synths are very just like, you know, just generically labeled. Like if we go in and solo them, let's listen real quick. I'm going to turn the master fader down. I don't want to blow anybody's ears off. I can see why they did that. See, I would have named this pad. Pad. You know what I mean? Some of them are like pads. Alright, whatever. So, they have their reasons why they did that, but it is what it is. So now, let's go ahead and start color coding. So you see the tracks are already organized next to each other. You see that all the drums are next to each other over here. So what I can do is, if I click on one of them and hold Command and click on the name of the next view, I can highlight multiple tracks. And after I highlight multiple tracks, I can go to Window, Color Palette, and choose a color. My drums are usually brown. Why is it not letting me do that? Boom. All right. Bass for me is usually a lighter brown. It's just like the way I like to color things. Piano, I like to have as yellow. Synths. Let's see, what color should I do synths? Usually I do purple, but maybe I want to change that now. No. Synths. Maybe I'll do pink. All right. So the synths, I'll choose a pink kind of color. So if you want to, you can hold Command and click on multiple names, or if you click on one of the names, hold Shift and click on another name, all the names and tracks in between those two will get selected. So it's a kind of faster way to do that, right? E-guitar effects. That should probably be within... So here's the thing. Even though it's an electric guitar effects, I feel like it's going to be under the synth category. Let's see what this is. Yeah. So it's going to be more of a synth kind of layer. So I'm going to group that along with the actual synths, right? Hey, Steven, we're on YouTube. Link is in the chat. I'll see you on that side. All right. Strings. Let's do something like a orange. And vocals, I like to go with blue, sky blue. It's my favorite. So there you go. Now, instead of having 36 tracks to deal with, I have 5 or 6 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups to deal with. So much easier to deal. Some of you guys I know like to separate your lead vocals from your background vocals. Totally respect it, right? But primarily I have drums, bass, piano, synths, strings, vocals. So that's 6 different sections, right? So there you go. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create Aux Tracks. Now this is where it becomes interesting because some of you guys struggled with setting up reverbs and delays. So just follow me the best you can. But I'm going to set up reverbs and delays for some of these individual sections, right? So for drums, if I wanted to add reverb for drums, I'm going to create a stereo aux track and call it drum verb. Right? Whenever you set that up, whenever you set up an aux track, you hold Command, click on the solo button to permanently solo it, select your input. Any free input is fine. So in this case, I'll go with 9 and 10, and then add your plugin. So for drums, I'm gonna do Verb Suite, which is a Steven Slate plugin, right? Make sure you mute yourself on Zoom. Matt, I don't know why, but I think I can hear your phone. Yeah, thanks. All right. Finally fixed my wife. Okay. Oh, your Wi-Fi. Okay. Jesus Christ, dude. Careful. Anyway, so yeah, so the VSC is a reverb plugin by Slate Digital. And as I go through this process, you're going to see some of the go-to plugins I use and some of the go-to companies I use. So maybe this is going to be informative to you in that way too. So there you go. Drums, reverb. Now, usually I don't have delays for drums, so I'm really not going to set up a drum delay. So I'm not even worried about that. But now what I can do is if I say wanted to add reverb on the snare, I can go to the snare track and set up my bus. So go to the sends on the snare track, click on that, and send a copy to bus 9 and 10, right? This fader is going to send a copy of the snare to the reverb, right? And I can show you if I can find a place where there's some snare. Right? So you can hear that. Now, just right off the bat, I can hear that we'll probably need something with a longer tail. Or maybe not even a longer tail. But anyway, let's not make any assumptions because I haven't even heard this song, so I don't want to set up any assumptions. So let's start creating our reverb auxes, right? Now look, you don't have to do this per group. You can have just one reverb and delay aux just for the entire session if you want to. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine. I like to have different reverbs for different instruments. It's just a personal preference of mine. So let's do piano. Stereo aux input, piano verb, and I might add another one. You can add multiple, like when you're creating a new track, this is what shows up. If you want to create more than one new track, you can hit the plus sign and create another one, right? And we'll do piano delay. Always command click the solo buttons. Set the input to a free bus. Let's say 13, 14, 15, 16 for the other one. And then for piano, let's use let's see, what will be good for piano? Maybe the Fabfilter Pro R. Maybe, we'll see. And for piano delay, maybe we'll just go with something simple like the delay 3 from Pro Tools. Now, because I've set up my tempo correctly, right, I can link the stereo delay because it's a left side and a right side. I can choose quarter notes and turn up the feedback. So I'm kind of already prepping my session in a way that's going to make this a lot more fun, right? For synths, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a stereo aux called synth verb, and then I'm going to create another aux called synth delay, right? Command, click the solo button on both of these auxes, set the input to a free bus. So the first one I'm going to set the input to 17, 18. The next one I'm going to set the input to 19 and 20. And then set up the reverb. Now, in this case, I might just copy these over. If you want to copy plugins over, you hold Option, click and drag the plugin, and let go. And there you go. Option, click and drag, and let go. All right. Strings, we'll do the same, and I'll probably use the same reverb. Just to get, again, I have no idea what this song sounds like, so I'm not going to make any assumptions on what the best reverb is going to be for this. Doesn't make sense to do that. I don't think strings will need delay, but I'm just going to set it up just in case. Command click the solo buttons, set up the inputs, right? I'll show you how to do that cascading thing if you're interested, but I'm just doing it for efficiency right now. And then I'm just going to copy these over. All right, there we go. Finally, vocals, everybody's favorite. Now for vocals, I'm going to set up 2 different types of delays, just because there might be an occasion to use a quarter note versus an eighth note. So I'm going to create one stereo aux for Vox Verb. You know, sometimes people create 2 different kinds of reverbs. Again, it's all up to you. Going to create another aux called Vox Delay Quarter Note. And I'm going to create another one called Vox Delay Eighth Note. So I'm going to have 3 stereo auxes that are going to do different effects for the vocal, right? Just a reminder, if you're on YouTube and you can see this video and you can hear me, you don't have to come back into the Zoom chat. It's not really necessary. Now, I'm going to command click the solo buttons over here, right, to permanently solo the auxes. Now, the shortcut to do all 3 of them is, if you have all 3 selected, you can do Shift, Option, Command, and click on the solo button, and it'll do all 3. The same key command, if you do Shift, Option, Command, and set the input to a free bus, it will do something called cascading, which means it'll set the first one to 2526, the next one to the one after 2728, and the next one to the one after 2930. It's called cascading. So you see how this is bus 2526, 2728, 2930. Very, very cool shortcut to know. So there you go. For vocals, I generally, again, I don't know exactly what this song is going to need, but I generally like this plugin called Lustrous Plates by Liquid Sonics, I believe. There's just something about it that's super lush and super vibey. And most of you will probably know what I'm about to do, but for delay, go with the H delay. Very, very popular delay. And we said this one is for quarter notes, so I set the timing to quarter notes on this one. I'm going to do a high pass filter so that everything below 100 hertz is kind of cut out, and everything above like 7K or 6K. Let's do 5 or 6K because that's where all the S's are. I don't really need a lot of that harsh S-ness in the delays, right? The delays are supposed to be more like as a pad kind of effect, or like a very ethereal effect. It's not supposed to be harsh and pokey. So I'm going to take out a lot of that high end from especially the sibilances. All these S's sounds, these S sounds, they happen in like the higher frequencies. So I'm going to reduce that in the delayed version of the signal. I'm also going to turn this analog thing off. It just produces like a fake analog vibe. Don't really need that right now. And then I just copy and paste by holding Option, click and drag. Click on the next one, and this is supposed to be eighth notes. So I'm just going to change that, but they're essentially the same. Now again, I'm not committing to any of these because I don't know what this shit sounds like. But here we go. We have a session that's halfway prepped and ready to go, right? Pretty dope. Now, the one thing that I will do on top of this that is actually, I think it's M5, but you can do this right now, is you can subgroup, and this is something I already talked about, right? You can subgroup everything into its own little group. Now, here's what I'm going to do. Right next to my master fader, I'm going to set up all my subgroups. So I have I have drums, bass, piano, synth, strings, vocals. So those are my 6 different sections. So I'm going to click on the master fader, and then right next to it, I'm going to create 6 stereo aux tracks. All right. Now let's rename these. So we can call this drums, right? I just do them with all caps. Bass, piano, synths, strings, vocals. All right. And I color code my subgroups this dark blue, right? The next thing I do, because these are all Auxes, and I'm going to select all of them, press Shift, Option, Command, click on the solo button so they're all permanently soloed. Again, always permanently solo these Auxes. Then I'm going to set the inputs up for these, right? Because I want to be able to subgroup the drums into the drum bus, the bass into the bass bus, the piano into the piano bus, etc., etc. So I'm going to click on the input and set the drums up to, I go all the way down. I go to like 101, 102 so that it's no confusion, right? And then if I want to do all of them, I can select all of them, press Shift, Option, Command, and set up the first one, and that will cascade down and do all of them. All right? Next, I'm going to create one more stereo aux called the mix bus. All right? This is what everything is going to feed to. Now, you might be wondering, well, wait a second. You have a master fader and a mix bus? Why would you want that? This might make more sense as you do more and more mixes, but there is a slight difference to the master fader than a regular aux in terms of pre-fader, post-fader, but also sometimes you'll want to have reference tracks in your mix, because sometimes you might be wondering, well, I don't know what to do. This sounds good as it is. And a good way to go about mixing is to import a track that sounds really good and compare your track to the track that you imported. If the track that you imported or the reference track sounds way better, then maybe there's something you should do to your mix. Very, very common thing to do. References are also good because it allows you to replace your brain in terms of what needs to be spectrally distributed, what needs to be spatially distributed. It gives you that sense of like position, or it gives you a sense of clarity as to how to mix, because you could hear things and turn knobs and shit forever, but if you don't know which direction you're going in, you can get lost pretty severely, as you might know. So then I have a mix bus over here, right? Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to output all these buses into the mix bus because I want everything to feed the mix bus. Now I can select all of them, and if I hold Shift Option, just Shift and Option, and change one of the outputs, it will change everything to the same output. And I want to change them to 9900, which is where the mix bus is. So all these tracks are feeding the mix bus. All right. Next, I'm going to output all these drums to my drums subgroup. All right. So what I do is I select all the drums, Shift Option, and output all of them to 101, 102, which is my drums subgroup. Now here's one thing that you might be wondering. Jesus Christ, there's so many numbers. Bus 99, 100, 9, and 10. This shit is too confusing. And you're right. I totally agree. What you can do is you can rename your buses, which I always do. So if you right-click on the name of the bus, you can select the rename option, and I always just rename it exactly what the track is, just so that there's no confusion. So drums, right-click on the bus input, call it drums. Same with bass. Same with piano. Same with synths. Same with strings and vocals. Now it becomes easy. The bass is going to the capital letters bass. Now you might be wondering, well, why are you subgrouping a bass if there's only one track? And you're right. I don't have to. There's no reason to do it other than the fact that bass can sometimes need to have what's called a parallel processing effect. So what I mean by parallel processing is that when you set up reverbs, what you're doing is you are taking a dry signal and sending a copy of it to a reverb unit, and then you're blending in the dry and the wet, right? Well, sometimes you receive a bass track as a pure, clean DI signal or direct input signal. No effects, no nothing, no amp, nothing. Sometimes it's very common to have the dry, clean DI signal on one track of the bass and then have another track which is exactly the same audio clip but running through an amplifier. I have certain amplifier effects that I may use on this. And then you have a clean DI and an amp version of the bass on two separate faders. So that's why. It's just in case I might do that. Piano, I'm going to output to my piano. Synths, I'm going to output to my synths. Strings, I'm going to output to my strings. And vocals to vocals, right? Now look at that. Everything is super organized and neat and top down. It's a very top down approach. So if you can think of it like almost like a pyramid, right? It's like it's got like these tiers or this hierarchy, right? Of tracks. Because right at the top you have the mix bus. That's where everything is gonna go. The master and the mix bus, right? Then you have the big subgroups like drums, bass, piano, strings, all those stuff. All of those feed the mix bus. And then on a layer below that, you have all the individual tracks, right? Because the drums split up into all the individual drums, the bass splits up into bass, piano splits up into piano, right? So it's like you kind of have these three tiers of organization. Everything is super organized now, right? So let's begin. Now, typically, I would start by adding effects on the mix bus, right? So I would add certain EQs and stuff just to kind of have my mix chain, but I'm not going to do that this time because that might be a little bit of a foreign concept, a little bit difficult to understand. So for now, I'm just going to leave that as is. So let's start with some drums. Let's actually start getting into this, right? I'm going to actually mute, what's the shortcut to select multiple tracks? So you can either click on the name of the track to select the track. You can either hold Command and click on different names. But if you want to select a bunch of tracks that are next to each other, you click on the name of the track, hold Shift, click on the last track, and it selects everything in between those two. All right. So let's start with, actually, let's start with vocals. So if I'm going to start with vocals, I'm going to mute all the other ones and just focus on these vocals, right? So the vocals are all the way down here. Now let's go find out what these vocals are. She sounded good on the rough mix, so, or on the whatever I heard. So let's see. I'm also gonna make sure it's not too loud, so I'm just gonna turn this down a little bit. Oh, might be too soft. Okay, so it's not too soft, it's just the vocals are soft. So,
fading from reality.
So she's got an interesting voice, right? I think she gets more powerful in some of these.
Away
Or not.
inside, it hides. It blurs reality.
But I mean, she's got a pretty voice. It's a nice, soothing voice. You know, yeah, it's good. It's good. So let's listen to the voice and let's apply some things. So I don't know if you heard it or not, but there's definitely some EQ things that I want to do. Now here's the thing. I actually need to be able to hear her properly. There's a couple of ways of doing this, right? If you go to the actual clip, there's a little gain button right there that you can use to turn up and turn down the gain, right? So if you don't see that on every clip, you need to go to View, Clip, and make sure that Clip Gain Info is checked, right? It's this little fader down here where it says 0 dB. You click on the fader and it pulls up a fader, and you can adjust that, right? Now here's the thing, you got to be a little careful with this because when you turn this up and down, when you turn it up, you're adding artificial gain to the actual signal. Whether that's good or bad, it's up to you as to what that means. When you reduce, it's less significant, but it's just good to know that you are altering the signal when you add gain, right? Now, personally, in a lot of these cases where the recording was like, let's call it semi-pro, high-end amateur, it's like I'm not too concerned about it. So I might actually just turn these up a little bit, like maybe by 3 dB. Still pretty soft. Let's see when it gets a little louder, what happens.
Inside, it hides. It blurs reality.
Still pretty soft. That's okay though. Now I can already tell that these vocals were either done with no compression or extremely little compression. Not a terrible thing, but not the best practice in my opinion. So just for now, I'm going to turn the fader up so we can hear it a little bit more.
Fading from reality.
I'm going to turn up my speakers. And then I'm going to apply EQ. Let's go ahead and add some EQ because I want to actually modify some of that stuff.
Fading from reality.
So there's definitely some weird kind of upper mids. We kind of talked about that almost honky area. It's hard to like give you guys like a proper description, but like remember the guy's voice in that other song, the Stretched Out Like a Rubber Band? There was like that upper range mids, like the 900s. That was a little weird. I kind of hear a little bit of that here, maybe a little bit lower. So we need to fix that. You can also hear some of the room tone, especially in the low end if you just listen.
Fading from reality.
I mean, it's not terrible, right? But we might as well get super anal about this stuff, right? And then maybe want to add some top end as well. So first thing, actually, wow, I didn't even realize, but because this has a spectrometer and it's already shown up, you probably already saw what I was talking about on the spectrogram, about this low frequency. We don't need any of this. So we can go ahead and I'm going to put a high pass to about 50 or 60.
Fading from reality.
Next, we're going to find that mid-range that's a little bit weird. So what do? We boost a band, right? We adjust the bandwidth so it's a little bit narrower, and then we scroll around and search for that sound until we hear it loud.
Fading from reality.
Right? There it is, 660. So it's a little bit below what we had in the other song, but it's still there.
Fading from reality.
Now, obviously, you can even see it on the spectrogram here, but I really encourage you to train your ears while you do this.
Fading from reality.
Right? Now, I did take a quick listen to their mix of it, and it is a little bit more of an ethereal kind of vibey track, and you can even tell from her vocals that it's a little bit more, vibed out, right? So for that reason, I'm not really going to add too much low end to her voice, like bass and depth to her voice, because I don't think that's what they're going for in this song. Remember, any question that you have that you get stuck at, like whether to make a decision, always go back to what does the song need. So if I had a question like, man, maybe I could add some more bass to her voice, right?
Fading from reality.
But then if I go back and think about what the song is, it's like, well, the song doesn't want this. Always serve the song. Very important. But I am going to add some top end.
Fading from reality.
So you have a little bit of that crisp sound now, right? Yeah, that's interesting fade out. Next, I'm going to turn this fader back to 0. If you have a fader anywhere in any position and you want to set it back to 0, you hold Option, click on the fader, and it defaults back to 0. Next, I'm going to click on another insert and open up the Fabfilter C2 Compressor. We already know what a compressor does, and I want to even out these vocals a little bit more. So let's find a section where it gets a little bit weird. This one's a good example. I mean, both of these are good examples. They're a little bit uneven. All right, so let's try this one first. I'm gonna set my threshold to about 5:1 because I don't think they compress on the way in. Actually, I might go 6:1 on this. Set my attack relatively fast. Release, we're gonna have to play by ear. And let's play with the threshold.
Inside, it hides. It blurs reality. Fade into my dream, my lost reality.
There's a lot of clicks and pops in this, which is very unfortunate. Actually, if you guys are interested, I can show you some cool shit right now. This is something that you guys are only going to get into in Mod 4, but this is a lot of what we do in post-production, right? When you're cleaning up audio for audiobooks and podcasts and stuff. But check this out. Click.
My dream, my lost reality.
Click in there too. You can actually highlight this and send it to a really cool software called Izotope Rx. Again, don't get confused by this. This is not in the syllabus. Don't freak out. I'm just showing you because I think it's interesting, right? So this is a spectral representation of her voice. Like we're not seeing the waveform, right? This is the waveform of her voice. We're not seeing that. We're actually seeing the frequencies of her voice, right? You can even see the pitches over here, right? and you can see the parallels up, the harmonics and the overtones. Pretty dope, right? And what you can do is you can find these little clicks that constitute the clicking sound and basically just get rid of them. And there's one right there. Ugh.
Into my dream, my lost dream, lost.
This one right here, you can get rid of that.
I lost dream.
This one here, you can get rid of that.
Lost dream.
You can get rid of this bad edit. This is a bad fade in and fade out. Whoever comped these vocals didn't do a good job right over here. It's not going to be accurate. Actually, use partials. Yeah, there we go. I'm just going to do this quick. Don't worry about this shit. This is not part of this mod. Mm-hmm. All right, let's just go with that. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that because I think it's pretty cool. But what we're focusing on now is compression, right?
Fade into my dream.
Really?
Fade into
I'm getting way too caught up in this. Whatever. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. Just know that there's some really fucking cool tools out there that'll help you with this shit.
Fade into my dream, my lost reality.
So I'm trying to even out the vocals a little bit.
Inside, it hides. It blurs reality. Inside, it hides. It blurs reality. Fade into my dream, my lost reality.
So that's pretty good.
The sky tonight. For
There's distortion on this voice.
the sky
Oh well.
tonight. Fading from
And the last thing we need to add on this vocal is some nice reverb. So how do we do that? We go to our vocal track, we go to the send, and we send a copy of the vocal to the vocal reverb, right? Which is bus 2526. I'm going to go click, send a copy to bus 2526. This fader determines how much of the copy of the signal goes to the reverb.
fading from reality.
Telling you, lustrous plates, man. Love it. Now, if you don't want to have this fader pop up all the time and then adjust it, what you can do is you can hold Command and click on this little arrow on the buses, and it opens up the sends a little bit more clearly. So I like to have them like that, so it just looks like you can access them way easier, right?
Fading from reality.
Could probably go harder on the decay.
Fading from reality.
And I think what's going to really benefit this vocal is a combination of reverb and delay. Now the delay is on 2728 and 2930. So I can send a copy to 2728, see what this does.
Fading from reality.
So this is a very common technique when you want these kind of big ethereal vocals. You combine reverb and delay.
The sky tonight follows me in my dreams.
Now I'm wondering, instead of having eighth notes, we should probably have half notes instead, because this seems like a more vibey track. So we don't want really fast delays. Let's see what it sounds like instead of a quarter note delay. Let's see what it sounds like with a half note delay.
The sky tonight follows me in my dreams.
So that's really cool. The half delay is really cool if we want to have the echoes kind of effect where it's like, hey, hey, hey. But that's not what I want. I want to use this particular delay effect to add to the ambience of the delay. So, I'm sorry, add to the ambience of the reverb. And to do that, I'm going to switch back to the quarter notes.
The sky tonight follows me in my dreams.
I'm going to get rid of some of that high end, because I don't need that high end for this.
Inside it hides, it blurs reality. Fade into my dream, my lost reality.
Feel like, all right, that's fine.
Fade into my dream, my lost reality.
This T is a little soft, so I'm just going to turn that gain up a little bit.
My lost reality.
All right, so that's like one of the vocals, right? Let's listen to the second one. It might be the same kind.
I close my eyes. Thoughts wander
Gonna gain that up a little bit.
away.
Maybe gain these up by about a dB. All right, so these look like lead vocals 1 and lead vocals 2 seem like they serve the exact same purpose, right? Which is to kind of have these little words sparse through. They're not like backing vocals. What's the plugin from Slate? Which plugin? Oh, Lustrous Plates. Yeah, they're from Liquid Sonics, but I got them through Slate. I think if you have the Slate All Access, which is all their plugins, full access all the time, you get Liquid Sonics Lustrous Plates with that package. So anyway, Lead Vox 1 and Lead Vox 2 sound like very similar purposes. Remember, we talked about main characters, side characters, all this stuff in the context of a story. Every character has its function and time and place to actually shine. The lead vocals 1 and lead vocals 2 sound like the exact same quote-unquote character. So what I can do is I can copy and paste all these effects to lead vocals 2. So hold Option, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. All right. So there you go. See if these sound good together.
Close my eyes. Thoughts wandering away. The sky tonight follows me in my dreams. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering.
So it seems like lead vox 2 is softer. So for that reason, I need to compress a little bit differently.
I close my eyes, thoughts wandering away. The sky tonight follows me in my dreams.
All right. So they're slightly different purposes now that I'm hearing it. But that's okay. They're close enough to copy and paste. Now let's listen to these background vocals. What do these do?
Find me awake inside. it hides. Voices in my head are slowly fading.
So it's just...
softly whispering.
Aha. So it's basically unison for the entire thing except the end.
Are slowly fading, softly whispering.
So there's a harmony at the very end, right?
Fade into
Unison.
my dream, my lost reality.
This is not a good recording. Here, clicks and pops and everything.
Fade into my dream, my long lost fantasy.
So you can hear all these clicks and pops. Please get good at all the boring shit that I taught you. Editing, tracking properly, listening and paying attention. You know, you can fix some of these things, but, you know, anyway, whatever. No, let me say it, right? You can fix a lot of these things, but whenever you fix things, it's like saying, hey, it's okay. You can cut yourself because you can always heal from that. But guess what? You're going to have fucking scars and shit for the rest of your life. So why the fuck wouldn't you just do it right the first time? You know what I mean? Just go in with that mentality. Again, not shitting on any of this because these are all student projects, but something to just keep in mind is like whenever you're going in, go in hard, pay attention to every single detail. And let me be honest, man. It's like you should hear some of the first recordings I did. It sounded like fucking shit. And mostly because I didn't know what I was doing. And two, I thought if I gave it to a mix engineer, they'd just fix everything and make it magically work, right? Don't go in with that mentality. Don't be like me. Be like, do it properly. Get a nice, clean recording. Pay attention to the sound and make sure nothing's distorting or clipping or cutting off. Make sure that when you're comping, you know how to edit things correctly to make it sound like one take, but also make it sound clean. No weird edits, right? Just something to keep in mind, right? With love. Harmonies. Like thirds, I guess. So whenever it says background 1 and background 1 DT, they're doing the exact same thing, right? These two tracks seem to be doing the same thing. These two tracks seem to be doing the same thing. These two tracks, these, et cetera, right? Now, what I can tell already from the way the vocals are laid out, these are supposed to be background vocals that are kind of more in the background. So I can pan one of them all the way to the left and the other one all the way to the right. So then I have a...
awake
right?
inside.
And then I'm going to EQ both of these, but I'm going to apply a slightly different strategy when doing these background vocals. I'm definitely going to high pass.
Awake,
Actually, let me just focus on one so you guys can actually hear the difference, right?
awake inside.
The only thing that I'm going to do different is that I'm going to do a pretty extreme dip in the middle and a little boost on the top end. So this is going to be a little bit more extreme. And the reason is I don't want these vocals to sound super, you know, chesty and full. I want them to sound almost like thin and like a velvet cloth over the mix, right?
Awake inside. It hides.
So listen to the before.
Awake inside. It hides.
It's got a little bit of that depth to it. After.
Awake inside. It hides.
Now I might adjust this, but for now, I'm going to leave it as is. The other thing I'm going to do is because these are background vocals and they're supposed to sit kind of further back in the mix, here's a strategy you can use, right? You want something to be placed in the back of a mix, right? You do that by placing it in like a reverb setting and pushing it all the way in the back of the reverb hall. But you don't want to lose the definition. You don't want certain words to disappear. So what you have to do is you have to reduce the dynamic range. You have to compress it pretty hard so that it's still audible, but still in the background. So you compress, push it all the way in the back, and that's how you can still hear ethereal background vocals.
Awake inside. It hides. reality. Voices in my head. I'll slowly fading, softly whispering.
So that's like almost 10 dB of reduction. That's pretty hard. So I'm just going to copy that to the other vocals. And actually, before I listen to the both of them, let's add some reverb. Let's start with the copy.
Awake inside it hides.
Now, I'm going to teach you another strategy for getting super ethereal vocals, is the pre-fader. I already talked about the pre-fader before, right? Which is, pre-fader setting means that this fader does not affect the copy being sent. So what do I mean by that? If it's off pre-fader and I reduce this fader, right? This fader affects the copy as well that's being sent. But if I'm in pre-fader mode, right? This doesn't affect it. It still sends that much of a copy. Pre-fader reverbs is one of the best ways to create this kind of ethereal vocal sound, right? All right. Anyway, so I'm going to set this to pre-fader. And reduce the dry. Add a delay. Now this is supposed to be the left side, so I'm going to pan the dry to the left and the wet to the left. Copy and paste these. Make sure these are panned to the right, right, right. And then we got... I still feel there's a lot of chest in that. I might go more extreme with this EQ. I don't know if that's going to work. Now we're killing the character, so I'm gonna go back and try to fix that first one. This is an extreme EQ. Usually I would never do this, but I think it needs it. So this is what I was talking about. Even me, you literally just saw an example of where I'm like, dude, this is not how I use EQs. Like, this is a very extreme case. But again, everything that I mention in these classes and whatever you hear are guidelines. You can break these rules and bend them to make shit work to the song's favor. All right, so now I'm going to teach you something really cool, right? So if you have two tracks that you would like to have a similar control over, you can select both of them, press Command G, and create what's called a group. So I'm going to call this bvox1. And check this out. See how the letter A is written over here, and it says bvox1 as the name of the group, and you have this blue bar? This means that I can control both faders with one fader. It also means, this is the beautiful part, that I can edit these together. Very, very useful, right? This is called grouping tracks, right? So you can make quick edits to both tracks really, really easily, right? Very, very useful. Now, if you're like, oh my God, I also want these to be grouped, you can do that. It's actually a preference setting. So if you click at the bottom left of your screen to view your group list. Remember, we talked about this in one of the first classes. I can see that my B Vox is over here. And when I deselect it, you can see in the corner over here that it enables and disables the group. When it's on, they move together. When it's off, they move separately, right? And if you have the mix window going, by default, the AZ hotkeys is set to the groups. So whenever you're in mix window view, you can actually activate the groups by just pressing the letter affiliated with them. So the letter A, if I keep pressing, it'll toggle between the groups. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, modify, and make sure that the sends level for groups are controlled together. Again, that's a little bit more of an advanced thing, so don't worry if you didn't understand that. But the groups thing is very, very useful to know. So I'm actually going to EQ the reverb a little bit. More soothing. All right, so there you go. Now, the cool thing is the background 2 vocals are very similar to the background 1 vocals. So I can actually, first of all, pan the background vocals left and right. I can copy a lot of these effects, right? Boom, boom. Again, these are just starting points, but they're going to be pretty dead on. Boom, boom. And then I'm going to create a group with these two called bvox2. I got this. So let's see what this sounds like. This one sounds a little bit more nasal though. I'm going to change that EQ. Command G. Then I'm going to balance these two out just for now. I'm going to turn background vocals 2 down. And I can do the exact same thing with background vocals 3. 3. And background vocals 4. You guys thought mixing was fucking easy and fun and shit. It is easy and fun if you know what you're doing, right? So don't get intimidated right now, because this is your first look at a very, very basic idea of mixing. So you can see that once you get certain things set up, you can kind of copy and paste. Again, don't copy and paste and just leave them alone. Listen and make sure it works, because these are just starting points. You may have to adjust stuff.
My dream, my long
There you go. You got some vocals going.
I see the light. I see the light that's keeping me. I see the light that's keeping me awake. I see the light.
Hey, Mike. Dude, I was literally just about to text you. I hope you're doing good, man. I was literally about to text you, see how you're doing. George, my guy, I haven't seen you in so long, man. I hope you're doing well, bro. Miss you. This is probably one of the best students I've ever had. George Escalante. All right, so we got some vocals going. Now remember, all these vocals are going to this vocal subgroup. So what does that mean? That means if I put an EQ on the vocal subgroup, I can EQ the entire vocals in one go.
I see the light that's keeping me awake. Inside, it hides, it blurs reality. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering.
Now I have a suspicion that there might be too much S's going on, but for now I'm going to leave it as is. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a compressor on the subgroup. Now why would I do that? Because I already have compressors going on the individual tracks, right? See, all of them have compressors with different settings, or some of them are different, some of them copied. Well, here's the thing. Compressing one vocal track is one thing, evening it out. But when you have vocal tracks stacked on top of each other, all that shit adds up in level. So whenever that happens, you might want to tame out the entire vocal track. So we don't want to compress when it's just single vocals, but we do want to compress when the group starts to come in, right? I'm going to do very light compression.
I see the light that's keeping me awake. Inside, it hides.
Very subtle. See that?
It blurs reality. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering.
I'm going to get rid of some of those highs. It's too harsh.
I see the light that's keeping me awake. Inside, it hides.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you something called a De-Esser. So let's do this one.
Inside, it hides. It blurs reality.
So there's something about those S's that's a little bit too harsh. So we talked about compressors and how they can control dynamics. Well, a De-Esser allows you to control the dynamics, but just for the high end. So the see you, dude. So the Pro Tools default one is called the Dyn3 Compressor. Now look at this. If you hit HF only, it only compresses high frequencies above 7K.
Inside,
And if you choose your range, like your threshold,
inside, it hides. It blurs reality. Voices.
so it tames out those S's. Check it out.
Inside, it hides.
As opposed to,
Inside, it hides.
right?
Inside, it hides.
Right? So it's really good. Now that's an extreme example. I'm going to use the Fabfilter one. I really like this one.
Inside, it hides. It blurs reality.
I'm going to copy these over. Again, I would actually go in and double check all of them, but just as a time saver, I'm just going to leave it as is.
Inside, it hides. It blurs reality.
Somebody's coming into class now. I'll get him afterwards. So, you're like a Fabfilter. Yeah, I really like Fabfilter. So anyway, we got some vocals going, right? Let's leave the vocals as is for now.
Inside, it hides, it blurs reality. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whisper. Inside, it hides, it blurs reality. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering.
So let's see let's add one more instrument and then I'll give you guys a break. And I'm going to do piano.
Inside, it hides, it blurs reality. Voices in my head are slow.
So, anyway, I just did vocals just using EQ, compression, De-Esser, which is kind of a compression, reverb, and delay. Let's do one more. I'll do piano, but here's what I'm going to do. The reason why I just listen to all the instruments right now is because I want to know what moves I have to make. Remember, everything has to sound really good and clean, but it has to sound good and clean in the context of the song. I wanted to just hear what other instruments are available so I can keep in mind what to give space for. So let's do piano real quick. Man, this piano sounds great, right? It's probably MIDI. It sounds like programmed. But the only thing that I can think of is adding some EQ. So let's add some EQ to this second one. Don't need a lot of that low end, right? Because that's going to be bass. Ooh, you see this? There's a little high frequency. Well, if we wanted to, we could get rid of that by just finding it over here and then just dipping that down. Let's boost it around the upper mids. I'm going to take out some of the lows because that's going to be all bass. Yeah, so I like to do it reverb and delay for every individual subsection, but you don't have to do it like that. Many mix engineers just have reverbs, delays, and shit for all tracks together at the end of the session. This is just how I like to do it, right? Again, it's your preference. And I've thought about changing to the other way just to experiment. Let's add some reverb on these pianos. So reverb for the piano is bus 13 and 14. So I send a copy of this to bus 13 and 14. I wonder what delay would sound like on this, right? Might be kind of cool. So let's send a copy to delay, and let's set it to chord notes. It's adding a little bit of that fucking depth. Dude, come on. So let's see what this other piano is doing. So this is more high-end stuff, so it definitely doesn't need a lot of that low-end information. You definitely want the keys to punch through, right? This one doesn't need delay because it's gonna be very percussive, and delay will just make it way too confusing, right?
Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering.
I pan the piano a little bit to the right, you can see.
Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly whispering. Voices in my head are slowly fading, softly.
All right. God damn, who the fuck? You know what? It's almost break time anyway, so let's take a second and go back to Zoom.